morning, wherever you are in the art world. Today, we have, of course, our wonderful Michael Klein, again, and curating 95 North with Chris Freeman. Hello, founder and owner of this wonderful gallery. So, can you tell us a bit more about this private-public gallery, about your project, before we meet the two wonderful artists too that are with us today?
Yes, my name is Chris Freeman, and this is my gallery called Private Public. The gallery is located in Hudson, New York. That's upstate New York. And right now we have a show curated by Michael Klein called 95 North. And, you know, the reason I decided to start a gallery was that I have a successful business up here in Hudson, and I'm a painter as well. I make large scale paintings. So basically what I do is I work and I paint at night, and my life got really, really small. And essentially the people in my life I found to be not so interesting. And, you know, I come from a big life in New York, and I decided at some point to bring that old, parts of the interesting part of my past back here to Hudson, New York. So the space I'm in right now is my old painting studio, which can house really big paintings. And I decided that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to surround myself with people who make big paintings. Many times my paintings are not in any local shows because they're too big for this area. People show really small work around here for the most part. And there's a kind of vibe up here that I have a little discontent with. I have some discontent with the gigantic galleries in New York and whatever the scene is in New York now, which seems really different than when I was young and living in Manhattan. And I have some discontent with up here, which is like it's too serious in Manhattan and it's not serious enough up here. I don't know how else to say that. So, you know, I wanted to do something really in between. And, you know, I own this space. This is mine. Nobody can take it away. Like I'm so used to in Manhattan with all my lofts eventually, you know, being absorbed by a landlord and rented out for tons of money. So this is mine and you can't take it. So I built a gallery here. I contacted some friends up here to do a show last year, and right when we were going to do it, COVID hit. So we all know about that. Those artists, sort of their life changed a lot with COVID, and they've left New York and their stuff is in storage. You know, they don't really know what's going on. A lot of their work was absorbed by museums, and they're not really painting. So, you know, and September was coming already here. And so I just decided, you know, this space exists to do interesting things with art professionals and artists. So it's really wide open. And I decided, you know, I'm just going to call Michael Klein. I knew him for a long time, and I really love his eye. And he's somebody that's super loyal. I just love the way he works. So, you know, I wanted to work with him. So he was like, you know, he called me back like a month later. I said, really? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, well, I want to check out the gallery. And, you know, checked out the gallery, and then he really liked it. And he really liked my idea of having sort of like a free open space for interesting ideas. And we went on a journey together to create a show. 2-3 months of work, and we got this show together, and it's a pretty heavy show. So I'm really excited about it. And the town's sort of blown away. This in this entire area, you know, blue chip work isn't really shown, not to this extent anyway, and not like this, you know, unless it's a gigantic institution. Yes. So this is really the first time this kind of thing has happened in this, you know, general area. So we're real excited about it.
Thank you, Chris. And I would love for Michael to introduce his two artists.
3 artists.
Yes.
So let's see, I guess the best way, in the pink t-shirt on the upper left with the headphones on is Frank Holiday, who's lives and works in Brooklyn. On the other side of my head is Richmond Burton, who lives and works in Saugerties, New York. And to his, I guess to his left, is Catherine Lynch, who is a recent transplant to Catskill, New York. And I think I've known all of these people combined total of about 40 or 50 years. I'm a great supporter of their works. I've watched their work for a long time. I own their work. I stand behind their work. And as this idea came, and after Chris and I started to talk, I thought, well, we're going to put together some sort of group show. And then I suddenly thought, oh, it's the summer. Wouldn't it be great to do some traveling? And wouldn't it be great to visit some studios? And then this idea of 95 North came to me, that why not create a kind of fictional tour starting in New York and heading north? Because a lot of the artists I know are all over the place, and a lot of have transplanted because of this pandemic. And so we started to look at things and look at people and put together this very interesting group. I've talked to Chris and said, you know, this could be an annual event because there's so many artists that are moving to this region and who are leaving New York City for a whole variety of reasons. And it would be great to do these visits and to bring this work together, because it also gives, you know, collectors and viewers a chance to see this work in one location, but it also gives a great opportunity for these artists to get together and talk. I mean, one of the great things about the event was all these artists hadn't seen each other or wanted to meet each other and have a conversation about what they're doing, and, you know, oh, I hadn't seen this, and so on and so forth. So I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of people to get together. My estimate was we have had over 300 people at the opening. It was nonstop from 4 in the afternoon until 8 in the evening. And then we had a nice dinner afterwards. And I'm ready to do it again. And I know there are many, many artists in that area that would love to be part of this. I think as word spreads, they'll go, oh yeah, I want to do that thing. I will be, Chris, I just have to tell you, you're on your side. I don't know if you can fix that on your camera
Yes.
or on the phone, but you're,
Yes,
there
if
you
we can
go.
fix.
There you go. See, you were, yeah, great.
But it wasn't any good on its side. I thought it was better.
No, it is better to see, but
No, it's nice
unfortunately
to see
we are
you
all
sort of
upside
normal,
down.
because now you know, before it looked like you were in outer space. And then I'm going to do, Chris and I have been talking, I'm going to do a gallery talk on the 23rd of October for the public to really, again, talk about the show, talk about individual works, talk about why I support certain artists. The older I get, the more I'm supportive of artists who are aging as well. I'm not always looking for the new hot young thing. And I have enormous respect for the people in this show. As I said, I own their work, and I don't think I would be involved with showing their work unless I put my money where my mouth was. So do you want me to, do you want to, Carolina, do you want each of the artists to speak a little bit about the show or their work?
Yes, yes. Shall we
So
start with
let's do
Catherine?
alphabetically. Let's start with Richmond. If
Okay.
you want to talk a little bit about
Yes, okay.
what you're doing, and this,
Okay.
I should say, with Richmond's work, what I have. First of all, I bought a big painting of Richmond's 20 years ago now. Richmond, do you know that? For Microsoft, when I was curator of Microsoft, I've been a huge fan of his for years. This is a painter's painter. I mean, and I'm just enamored of his work. And what I found interesting in the last year or so, and dealing with the pandemic and dealing with the political situation, which all of us know what we've lived through in the last 4 years, which was near horror. Richmond has sort of been able to get that dialogue going in the work without giving up the kind of his language or his aesthetic. So the paintings have become, for me, more atmospheric in a way. They rest a lot on mythology. They deal a lot with spirits and with sort of good, bad, and evil, and I find it all very interesting and very much about what is happening right now. Go ahead, Richmond.
Oh, thank you. I always love what you say about art, Michael, and you write about it beautifully too. And that needs to be stated today, how rare that is, that someone writes in a way that doesn't involve jargon and the kind of current lingo and catchphrases. you just bring it back to the experience of being human.
Well, I think that's ultimately, if anything is about anything about the show, it's about that experience. I'm really tired of having to listen to someone say what my art is about. If it's not expressed, it's like listening to great music. If the musician, the composer has to stand up and tell you what this is about, then there's something really wrong.
That's correct.
And so I listen to a lot of classical music, and I'm and very interested in that. And I don't have to be sort of explained when it's loud and percussive. It's about anger. It's not, or it could be about an event. So that kind of reaction to works of art. I have to tell you, the other day when I was standing looking as we were hanging the show, that Robert Moskowitz painting of the Empire State Building, that jet of black that looks like smoke or a cloud. You know what suddenly dawned on me? That looked like it was a memorial to 9/11. That was the, here is one structure that has survived because they didn't attack that building, and the World Trade Center is gone, and all that remains is this very fragile puff of smoke. And that's a completely different way of looking at this man's work. That it's a political statement without it being beaten over your head. So anyway, but can you talk a little bit about the Icarus and about the blue figure?
Yeah, you're right. These are paintings that come from the, for lack of a better term, the age of Trump. Which I knew when he was elected, quote unquote, that we were in for a really tough time, and I prepared for it by taking a part-time job for the first time in my art career. I've always been fortunate to support myself from art, but I knew that it would change. Well, the year after 9/11 prepared me. That was a tough year also. But this was a longer, more existential crisis, in my view. And some of the paintings for several years got very, very dark. And I'm sure there will be the chance to show them sometimes. Many people who have been following my work don't really understand what I'm doing now, or they think that I've gotten very dark. But facing up the darkness is not getting dark. I felt like the only thing I would say in response to them was, well, what if children in cages? Do you think that's okay? So then that was followed by this very ethereal period. And so the two paintings that you've chosen for the show are from that period. And I'm so happy that they're being shown and seemingly really appreciated. I'm not getting a lot of that kind of knee-jerk criticism or resistance from what I'm doing now. What I'm doing now, to me, is the only way for me to proceed. I can't really control what I paint. I have to just go with what I'm inspired to do. And Icarus is very much about a downfall. It was painted after my mother's death. I was very close with my mom. In fact, the painting underneath it was hanging in her house. I decided when I got the painting back to paint over it, beginning as a tribute to her, but then it became more complex than that. And as you said, mythological. But there's another association with that painting, which was an interview that really stands out in my memory from about the Woodstock Music Festival. And I think it was the accountant of Sly Stone who performed, and he watched Sly Stone perform, and he had an angle, he must have been very close to the stage. He had an angle of seeing, like you've seen those beautiful photographs of Sly Stone with his wings silhouetted against one of the bright stage lights. And it appears like the sun. And then the accountant said, "Oh, I had this moment when I thought his wings are going to melt like Icarus, and he is going to crash to the ground," which unfortunately did happen with Sly Stone, except for a few comebacks. And so it was really about that kind of experience that I was feeling myself personally, for much different reasons, from, just having to deal with this seeming insanity that had taken over our world. And how do you persevere through that, in any way, without being driven crazy, you know? And so I really took refuge in my art, and I'm very glad that I had that outlet to survive. Same thing with the next painting, in the show also. I mean, I think it also it's become more figurative. And I think of artists as diverse as Giacometti to Dubuffet, which I've always loved their work, but I never thought that I had an artistic relationship to them.
Interesting.
Getting back to basics,
Yeah. Interesting. And do you think, I mean, this direction, I mean, you're pretty, I mean, the way you've moved into this, it seems to be something that you're going to continue, because obviously, I mean, things have changed politically, but not that much.
That's correct.
We seem to not talk about the fact that the death count in America from the pandemic is over 2,000 a day, and no one seems to talk about that.
That's
and
right.
That, there's a spiritual crisis, I think, that's looming around that, because there is no leadership, there's no direction, there's no, people are combating whether they should get a vaccine or not, when the choice is, well, you need to, because otherwise, you can die.
Yes.
So we're all sort of Icarus. We're, seeking the sun, and yet we don't pay attention to the detail. That too close, and we're going to die.
That's right. Yeah. And the fact that, as is often stated, and I think very effectively by many people, there's a quarter of the population who are refusing to be vaccinated in the name of freedom.
Right.
But that means that their idea of freedom disregards anyone else other than that.
Exactly. And I think that that's what's interesting about the paintings, is you're addressing a kind of social phenomenon. They're not just about you and your spirit, they're really about everyone, to please stop and think about this. Frank has two beautiful paintings in the show, both, I'd say, relatively recent, right, Frank?
Well, within
the last year or two.
Last year or two.
Do you want to talk a little bit about
well, first
that?
of all, I want to address Richmond and tell him, I've known your work forever, and it seems like this is the freest, most open work that you've ever done, and I don't get any of the darkness. I only get like joy and hope and expansion and light and freedom and everything that I love about painting. And I hope that it continues to fulfill you, and that you can follow those things. So I mean, my painting, I've okay, and Chris, is Chris here? I don't see Chris. Well, then I'm not there. He is. There's my little painting.
Right.
Well, one thing I find interesting about showing, like this painting has been in other shows, but it has never looked more beautiful than it did in the way Michael hung it in Chris's space. It was isolated. It was lit beautifully. The space around it, the gallery's beautiful. It is a beautiful space. And look who I'm next to. Everybody in this show has a moment. They all get their moment, and that is what is amazing. I don't know if it's Chris or it's probably everybody, but
it's probably Chris.
Probably Chris. It's definitely Chris. Michael definitely doesn't have anything to do with it. No, but Chris, but also this show, what I love about this show is it's multi-generational, and I've been in New York since like 1977, and a lot of these artists that are in this show were my heroes. And Michael created this, and I got to show with these people that I so respect, and I just love that you've created this opportunity to educate and to show beautiful work. It reminded me of Paula Cooper in the 70s. It just had that kind, it was the same kind of shape of a gallery. It was the same kind of like, it wasn't like tchotchke filled up crap. You know, there seemed to be everybody seemed to have there was a singularness to each painting or each thing in it, whether it was figurative or totally abstract. There was a focus that I think hasn't recently been discussed in art. And I loved that I could return to this kind of meditative, I could lose myself in the work. I felt the work was open, and I try to make my work open and vulnerable. And, you know, I love color, and I want you to be affected by the color. I want my hand to be there so you feel like it's made by a human. I don't want it to be too formal, but I don't want it to be figurative either. I want it to be on the edge of imagery, and I want it to be able I want you to be able to have an experience in front of it. And I think that the way that you presented it, I felt it. Usually I can't stand looking at my work, but I just felt so good looking at my own work. And that's kind of a first. Usually I'm just like, ugh, I hate it. And and I also found that there was so much excitement around the space and the artist. I mean, it was a great opening, and I have to give, and Michael and I I knew of Michael when, you know, Michael's historic, a legend in New York. He's always had his finger on, he's always been first before anybody else to spot great art. And the list of who he has worked with and who he has unearthed is amazing. And he still is writing and thinking and representing and selling and going forward. But the one thing about Michael is he fucking loves art. Above all else, he loves art. I love art. That's why I do it. That's why I've spent the last 50 years putting up with the bullshit in order to get in the studio and make something beautiful. And I identify with Michael on that because, you know, it is a business. It is critical. It is trendy. It is cutthroat here in New York. Maybe some of you have noticed that. But, you know, as an artist, you have to find something that keeps you going. You know, you have to find a reason to make another one.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the money you get and you spend it, and then here you are in the studio again. And you know, I have other dealers that I work with, but Michael is true to my heart and true to just, it means something to him. He's not like selling shoes. And that's really important for an artist. I've worked with every nightmare in this town, and Michael is not one.
But Michael, if you were to sell shoes, what shoes would you sell?
That's a good question.
You know, I think I would sell, what would I sell?
Something very
I have to think about it. Men's shoes or women's shoes?
You know, all shoes aside, what was really important as well in opening the gallery was that whatever shows here has to really have a dialogue with the pieces around it, or it's not in the show. And it was a pleasure working with Michael hanging the show for hours and hours and hours, and just constantly moving everything around. So that now the show just seems to walk itself around. I love the way everything in the show works together. I love this show.
Of course, we would. How long will he be there? So we can maybe hopefully.
It's permanent. We're going to keep it permanent. Chris is going to build another gallery for temporary exhibitions. This is permanent.
Okay.
We're going to extend the show. I'm not sure yet. late
We pro-
October, mid-November.
Right.
That would be
But
wonderful.
Catherine, can you talk a little bit about your Mad Ocean, which I want to steal and never let anybody else have it?
I think of myself as a poet painter. So
Yeah.
everything in the ocean is in life. And it's so nice to be able to show this painting because it's never been shown. It's 6 by 8 feet, and it's very hard to show work that size in a lot of places where I show.
Mm-hmm.
But the I'm much more interested in creating a feeling of something rather than the thing itself. So it's the feeling of an ocean during a storm. It's beautiful, powerful, horrific, all at one moment.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what I love about this painting is that I think it has every nuance of blue that exists, because it wasn't until we took the plastic off and I could see the kind of edge of the sky and the ocean in the distance that I see this lighter blue. And if you've watched a storm, if you stood on a beach and you've seen this, how cloud formations take place, it was pretty breathtaking to see that you were able to pull that off. I thought it was absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does kind of grab you and hold you, because it is sort of performing in front of you. You know, there is, and what I always liked about Catherine's work is that you don't just see something. It's not simply about representing a place or a person or an object, but you actually feel it. There's an emotion to everything that comes charging out. And I think this is sort of an underlying theme in all this work, is the emotional side of things, which for some reason we've kind of run away from or ignore, or I don't know what we do in America. It's almost as if we're ashamed to have emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And yet this work is all about feeling and about that looking and thinking about something and then feeling its character and quality. This is a painting from much earlier. This is from 2012, called Red Hot.
Red Hot Flower.
Red Hot Flower. And you know, I mean, it's that moment when you're walking in a garden and suddenly the flower grabs your attention, as if it's calling to you to please look and please admire my beauty.
Mm-hmm.
There is, and I think that over time, as your eye changes and your eye develops and matures, you're looking for different kinds of work. I mean, I don't know at 20 I would be as interested in this work as I am now at 69, because I will give the work time to look and spend time looking at it. And I don't know, maybe when you're younger it should be faster and quicker. There is the sculpture in the middle that Chris keeps walking by is by Jackie Ferrara. That's a tall cedar piece that she made in 1995. I've worked and known Jackie since 1976 in the first exhibition I ever curated. This is the last of the very large pieces that she's made. She's working now mostly on a smaller scale and also on wall drawings. And then to the left of that is the no, that's upside. If you turn to the Borofsky.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's backwards for me.
Right. So in the middle of the two paintings by Jonathan Borofsky, those are from 1984, but they could easily be from 2021. He's someone whose work I've looked at and admired for years. I've written about, did a catalog with him. He lives in Algonquin, Maine, and unfortunately, I just haven't seen him for the last 2 or 3 years. To his left is Matt Mulliken. This is from a project he did for an encyclopedia of imagery, an 18th century English encyclopedia. And then to their right is, or to the other side, are two paintings, recent paintings by Catherine Porter, who also lives in Maine. So we really are covering that whole, you know, sort of north to south. Start in Brooklyn, drive through Manhattan, hit some studios, and then go into the country, and suddenly you're, you know, you end up in Maine.
Fascinating, really. We are, even though we are not there, we feel, being there. It's wonderful, really, Michael.
I mean, obviously, now that we've done this, what I would really like to do next is to expand it. Same group of artists, add one more piece per artist, and then find another venue for it. I think I mean, it's great to hear all these compliments, but I take it very seriously. And I think that it's important that this is be seen by more people.
Yeah.
I think it would be great to get it on the road. And I'm going to work on that. I'm going to talk to a couple of people and see if we can move it to another location. Whether it goes into the city or whether it just goes to another state, I don't know. But I will try.
Or come all the way to Europe.
Well, the problem with Europe, it would be ideal, is of course everything costs a fortune to ship, and that's our biggest problem. So,
So we'll get a sponsor.
Unless we get a sponsor. So, but that's also been a possibility. So we'll just wait and see. I've got to make some calls and see what I can rustle up. Because we also would like, Chris and I has also talked about now that it's all done, is to maybe do a little trifold brochure with images of a work by, an image of everybody, and then a short statement about the show.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, once these are done, you want to have some record of it. And anyway, so that's where we're thinking right now. And but I'm charmed that I was asked to do this. I'm delighted at the reaction, and I want to do more. I enjoy this enormously.
You have such a good eye. You're such a good curator and writer, and
Thank you.
it's such a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun, and also I think, and I think it's one of those skills. I think it's one of those skills that develops over time. The first show I did was in 1976. It's 45 years ago. And you learn a lot, and your eye changes, and you I don't know, become more critical of how you do things. And my biggest concern was that we would have too much work for the space, and that it would be crowded. What I love is the fact that there's this just amazing dialogue between the pieces. And they all have breathing room, and they all stand up. There's no little weak link, so you don't have, well, that's good, and anyway, so that's, and it was important to include some people who are no longer around. Don't forget that, that they lived in this area too. We have Marjorie Strider, we have Gene Heistine, we have Richard Archwager, and we've lost some really major talents over the last decade. And I think it's important that we recognize and keep including them.
I would like to add, it's also inspiring to feel this chemistry between the curator, the artist, the gallerist. It's beautiful because, first of all, you're friends. I think it's been a long time artistic relationship that, in any case, has been that you have realized this wonderful exhibition. So really, thank you for continuing inspiring all of us from this other side of the world.
Well, it's interesting. I think that I was influenced a lot by curators in Europe who have strong, long relationships with artists. Too much of what happens in America is, a curator will show an artist and then that's it, they move on. I think these long-term relationships are very important, and whether, it could be 5 years from now before I do something else, but I would come to Richmond or Catherine or Frank and just say, look, I'm working on this. I just think you find a group of people that you're close to and you want to work with and follow them, and not just abandon it because it was interesting at the moment and now I've moved on. I question that. I think there has to be a certain loyalty to certain artists. You're never going to show everybody. You're never going to work with everybody. So why when we did the Microsoft collection, I made it very clear that we were going to focus on artists' select work, but it was never going to be a one-off. Too many collections of, well, I have one of those and one of those and one of those. I wanted to buy things, so we had a painting, a drawing, some prints, so you could actually see a body of work by an artist. And so we did that, and then it was like, well, once I'm done, somebody else can come in and they can do their body of works, so I really wanted to have a statement as opposed to just a collection. And I think this show is the same way. There's a statement, not just a arbitrary collection of who happens to be hot at the moment.
Right.
I would like to add one thing. I was reading what Michael sent me about all your articles, and one thing that I see through your paintings is, again, paraphrasing Richmond, is how do you find something new within? So how can you become or make it exciting? Always exciting through your artistic voyage. It's quite interesting because you all of you have started from one inspiration and arrived. How do you feel? How do you think you have reached that part, or would you like?
No estoy interesada.
Well, in general, I do bodies of work that last. They go for, say, 3, 5 or more years, and so you can generally organize the chronology of my work that way, and give usually the different groups titles, etc. And so this is the new work. All the paintings that are silver, there's not really an overall title, but that's probably appropriate because I'm still midway in this journey and I want to do much larger pieces now, with the same kind of general vocabulary and emphasis.
I mean, the one behind you is also very interesting. I've also loved that one, which is called Black Sun. That's on the wall, if everybody can see it, behind Richmond.
Yeah, so this is the painting I have hanging over my bed. I'm lounging on my bed with the dog, Parker, and that's the painting hanging over me. Thank you.
No, thank you to you. And there is also another from Catherine that I also, again, all of these are, I think, speaking to us because it's, again, very human. That sometimes we see something better when we don't, we don't look at it. And again, it's true. It's also in life when we don't, something happens when we least expect it. So thank you. I think, through your it's beautiful. Of course, we would love to be there. As I said, we would love to be there before you, or bring it here, Michael.
Well, okay. If you can help me find a sponsor, let's bring it to Switzerland.
We will do it. You know me.
Yeah, I do know.
Get done.
We created something with Francois that, I think nobody, we created and the Art Talks started as to link to an artist far, far away. And now we have an incredible community, which is incredible. I'm shocked. And a magazine where, Michael, you're writing beautiful pieces, and we can't wait to see. And maybe you can write an article on this exhibition, Michael.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about this could be an interesting statement. 95 North, because of this, old-fashioned way of going, where you actually don't just look at JPEGs, but you actually visit an artist's studio, which I think for me has always been one of the great experiences. Discovering things, talking to an artist, seeing how they live in that work. When I was at Microsoft, I would do studio visits, and while we were talking, I'd always sort of say, "What's in that drawing cabinet?" or "What's over there?" I found amazing things. I remember distinctly at Gregory Amanoff's studio, I said, "Can I look through this drawer?" "Oh yeah, go ahead, look." And I found a pastel, and I said, "This is fantastic." He said, "Oh yeah, I've completely forgot about that." Well, of course, artists forget about that because they're on to the next one. They're working and working, and they just put things away. We of course bought it, and it now hangs in their offices at Microsoft. So that's always been, for me, a huge pleasure, and discovering things in studios, and discovering what's hidden behind the door.